If the people that are supposed to be the moral compass of society are corrupted and put in the pocket of an individual, then they will just be sanitizing anything and everything.
Religious integrity is not there because as it is right now in Kenya, the church and the state have been married.
Let us not focus on the heavenly reward that we forget that we are here. We are here. We need practical solutions for people that are alive.
The church has always been considered an independent and dependable institution, especially after the fall of the Roman Empire in medieval Europe. The church was a place where people would seek solace, people found protection, food, and even shelter. But lately, the church has morphed into something else. And right now, when you look at the church and the state, and especially when it comes to politics, there is really a thin line, and the lines have been blurred. It's not uncommon to see political leaders, world leaders from all over the world across various countries, going to the Pope to kiss the ring and taking pictures with the Pope, who is considered a religious figurehead. Now let's bring it back home. Particularly after the 2022 general elections, it is a very common sight to see preachers from different denominations, different churches go to State House and carry Bibles in envelopes, as if that happens anywhere in the world. Anyway, that is what we're here to talk about. Basically, what is happening when it comes to the church joining politics? What is the role of the church, particularly in the political space and in social issues? And my name is Effie Joan Atieno, and I'll be your host today. In studio with me, I have two amazing guests from two very different fields, and I'll just give them time to introduce themselves, and then we can go right into the conversation. Let's start with you, Akili.
Thank you very much. My name is Derek Kimani. I am a Christian. I think for the purpose of this conversation, it's important to mention, who has been called to serve into the marketplace as a lawyer. Thank you.
To serve into the marketplace.
As a lawyer. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Okeo Ayeko. I'm a development consultant. I do project management. I also moderate and host. I'm also here as a Christian. So.
We should have had a Muslim here for diversity.
Well, yes.
But
yes.
yeah, because they have played a key role in this Maandamanos particularly. So thank you so much for coming in studio today. And we just want to have a conversation about the role of the church, or where does the church stand when it comes to politics and political issues, particularly in Kenya, because we've seen a lot of that happening. And maybe I'll just start with you, Erica. You can just tell us, especially on the division of the church and the state, the separation of the two, and how we are in this situation that we are, that this is now a conversation that we must have.
Yeah, so you know the Kenyan Constitution, Article 8 says, there shall be no state religion. Why should we not have a state religion? What does that even mean? That the church and state should not mingle at any point to prevent religious conflicts. Looking at a country like Kenya, we have so many religions. We have Christians, we have Kadhi. Oh, Kadhi is we have Muslims.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we have African traditional religions. So the article says there should be no state religion to prevent religious conflicts. I'm imagining if this was a state religion, if it was a Christian religion, and we say before we start anything, we need to pray. How about people who don't believe in prayer? So that's why there should be no state religion, to prevent religious conflicts in the state, and to also provide for religious freedom, religious liberty, that all of us have the freedom to worship whichever thing we believe in. Yes.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much. Maybe from a legal standpoint, Kimani, and maybe as you also respond to the same question, you can comment on, we recently had Parliament say they won't have budget cuts for the office of the First Lady and the Second Lady, and some of their staff include intercessors, people who are particularly hired
international intercessors
to pray for the country,
Kenya,
you know. So what is your take on that and where we are as a country?
So thank you very much for that question. And I think importantly, the discussion between church and state is a conversation that has plagued the world since time immemorial. It's not a conversation that, while yes, it's gained prominence in the recent times in the country especially, but it's a conversation that has plagued the universe or the world as we know it for the longest time. With the current now regime, and as you have said, which is predominantly has religious aspects towards it. The president, when he was declared the winner, he said, "I have been prayed into this position."
God has chosen the leader.
Exactly. And you see, religion has always been used and I believe misused to ensure that it subdues individuals and makes them exactly. And so if we have now a state where the president himself is recognizing himself as a godly appointed leader, then it is imperative for him to continue to maintain that validity of it's like the entire validity of his regime is pegged upon his belief as a Christian. And so he will continue to therefore fund the Christians. He will continue to fund the office of the First Lady, which is also like a separate Christian office there, to ensure that he's at the right side of history with the people that brought him in and who are predominantly Christians. And so budgetary cuts it's going to be very difficult to ensure to see that budgetary cuts are being, because the entire Christian or religious system is what has put him into power. So in order for him to continue to sustain that power, even when there is the revolt that we have currently seen, even when there is some form of discomfort in his leadership, as long as he knows he's in the right side with the church, they will always sanitize him. And considering they are the majority, our parents and all that, they will always also ensure that they quell the dissent that is in us, which they believe, I think, is also not very religious.
It's demonic.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it pretentious of us? Because yes, our constitution acknowledges that there is no state religion, but our national anthem starts with "Oh God," or "E Mungu nguvu yetu," and it basically acknowledges a deity. It acknowledges God, and that means it's already a Christian song, particularly. Then we come back to 2022. We have a president who was basically elected, as he said, on the basis of he's a religious man, he's a prayerful man, and we've seen the videos of him crying in church. We've seen our deputy president, the wife runs a church, is a pastor. Our first lady is a prayer warrior. I mean, she prayed like Moses and the waters at Mara. She prayed for the waters at Karen to be pure.
But you didn't see any miracle. That's the problem.
I know. We
can attest to.
That we can confirm. So we can't. So we have a situation where everyone is riding on this wave, and now there is the conversation of basically regulating the church. And we've seen yesterday there was that proposal, considering what happened in Shakahola, there was that proposal to even fine these people 5 million shillings for fake miracles and all that. So isn't, just like you rightly put it, isn't then this president trying to tiptoe in between? Because whereas he's trying to be a religious man, which is what got him into power, he also has to acknowledge the harms or the dangers that this religion that he's professing has caused, and therefore toe the line as a president and protect members of the public. Where does he draw the line, or how do we find a middle ground for him, particularly as a leader?
You see, that just brings me to the point of why was the separation of the church and the state important in the first place. It was important so that the religious institutions can, first of all, maintain their integrity, and then now the political institutions will also, they will also not be, they will still remain to their purpose. But now what we see, the religious institutions are no longer maintaining their integrity. First of all, what is the role of the church? Spiritual guidance, very important, as you had mentioned. Also community, take care of community things like food, water, and what. And then the third most important role of the church is to be like a moral voice of reason. And if the church and the state are married together, the church does no longer have the religious integrity. And this is what is happening right now. If we see politicians go to church and give them money, just simple things like money to build the church, can they stand once again and tell them you are a corrupt leader and you should step down? They cannot do that. That's the first problem, and that is what we are seeing right now. For instance, during Mandamano, we were really looking forward to religious leaders coming forward and speaking, and just telling the president or the IG or the IG is the Inspector General or the cabinet secretary in charge of security and stuff, just calm down, be the voice of reason. But we did not see that. These things came much later when the citizens had made so much noise, because the religious institutions have lost integrity. We no longer have, I cannot, at this point, to be honest, I really cannot say we have religious liberty. We have it to the point of we can still worship God in the day that we choose to worship God, the day that we believe to choose to worship God. But the religious integrity is not there, because as it is right now in Kenya, the church and the state have been married.
Yeah. And I think maybe to bring it to Ukimani, looking at even the biblical concepts of how the prophets and all that, they used to be with the state leaders. You look at Elijah, and he would always call out King Ahab for the atrocities he was committing, the atrocities the wife was committing to the people. But we now have a church that has been basically silent.
Yes.
A church that has been quiet. But then, on the flip side, you look at, for example, the Muslims. I mean, they have come out very strongly, by the way, in this mandamanos, and they literally offered their mosque during the mandamanos as a hospital, and we had a functioning hospital in there. So then it makes you wonder, if the religious leaders have been bought and they're in the pockets of the leaders, can the president then actually be sober in making decisions, or do we have a point where the president has to toe the lines? But also what you were saying, can we then not have a president who is religious? Maybe we need to think of that, because it's like we are putting ourselves in a very dangerous spot. Is it necessary to then have a president who is an atheist, or a president who does not subscribe to any religion? What do you think about that?
That's a very good question. But I do not think, well, it's the religion that is the problem. It's actually the manipulation of religion for personal gain. So the religion in itself has never been a problem. As you've rightfully stated, and I think as she observed, religion was always and has always been, and in its truthfulness, is supposed to be the moral compass of any generation. Exactly. In the sense that people can always look to religion to get clarity on certain issues. Because what religion, almost all religions insist on is a separation of absolute truths. That there is right and there is wrong. So that is usually the raison d'etre of any religion, that there is a right way to proceed and there is a wrong way to proceed. However, when the individuals that are now the caretakers of these religions, or the leaders that are of these religions, have been individually corrupted. What they do is that they corrupt the doctrine, and after the corruption of the doctrine, then it can be manipulated for personal gain. Slavery, for example, was an entire enterprise built upon religious misrepresentation. You know, we talk of jihad and we talk of some of the greatest evils that we have seen are all a corruption of religion and a corruption of religious truths to pit one as against the other. So the problem has never, I believe, been religion, but the manipulation of individuals through their selfish interest to use this religion. Because now, as I had said earlier, religions give us, as spiritual beings, we have a certain sense of belonging that we get from religions. And if we are, it therefore makes it easy to constitute people into a group. You can say we are a group of gospel musicians. We are a group of evangelists. We are a group of, and if you identify as Christians and all that, it becomes then very difficult sometimes to reconcile your logic with whatever it is that you are believing. So it becomes a question of, if the pastor says this is how we are going, it's now not a question of what is right, what is wrong, what the pastor has said. So if then that has become the way that a populace is behaving, a leader that is selfish will take advantage of this religious dogmatism and say, now, let us toe this line. If these people are naive, these people are easy to control, because I will only tap into the question of their feeling and their belief. They say, elect me because I am a Christian, elect me because I'm a Muslim. It's not about the religion, it's about the religion which they call the opium of the masses. Ensuring that people shelve their logic, and now, after shelving their logic, it's now a question of direct us, lead us, guide us, let us go to this direction. And if, as she rightly pointed out, if the people that are supposed to be the moral compass of society are corrupted and put in the pocket of an individual, then they will just be sanitizing anything and everything. And he knows that now he can act with impunity because he has the religious backing. He can act with impunity and say, that is the will of the Lord, you know? that as
the worst kind of manipulation.
Exactly, that is the will of the Lord. Let us continue praying, you know, even when things require planning, when things require intellectual application in order to provide solutions, we say we shall pray.
You know, that one just reminds me, you know, when you were having floods, a whole climate change problem that we should like just approach scientifically. And we're like, we should pray about it. Let's pray about it, you know. It's because of the wrongs that we are doing. And you're wondering which wrongs, and we have intercessors.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is not to discourage prayer, because it's an essential part of religious practice, but it is not the only solution, because certain solutions are practical, certain solutions, I do not need prayer to be able to build a road. We can pray as we start the construction.
Yes.
So why then do we need to pray for a miraculous making of a road or whatever facility? Yeah. So it's disappointing when that is done, but it has never, and I insist, been the problem of religion, but a problem of individual manipulation of religion for personal gain.
That's all I can say to that, guys. But now I have a question. I have seen both of you participate in the recent maandamanos, either digitally or even on the ground. I saw some of you with placards. So
call us
the question then someone would ask is, what do you want the church to do? Because they can issue a statement, but is it enough really? It's not. And some of them are not really genuine, because we have seen them go to State House and walk out with, you remember that picture of the brown envelope? It's now very synonymous with men of the cloth and State House. And we're asking ourselves, oh, nowadays we carry Bibles in brown envelopes, like people walking around with CVs. So then the question is, what exactly do you want the church to do as young people? What do we want the church to do when it comes to such situations of turmoil and political unrest? Because someone would be wondering, okay, you're saying the church is not acting, the church is not acting, the church is not. What do you want? Do you want us to convert our temples, our places of worship into hospitals, or to be a refuge for people? Do you want us to issue statements? What is it exactly? If you can put it into words, what is it that the young people want when it comes to the church? I would start with you once again, Erica.
First of all, let's go back and see why is this church there in the first place? Most importantly, I want to underline to be the moral compass. If we just, you know, I am those people who believe in foundations. Foundations are very important. So the church should go back to its foundation. Its foundation in the most important, apart from spiritual guidance, yes, and also be the moral compass, be the voice of reason for the society. We want the church to be the place where we turn to, like when politics and everything is not giving us the solution. We want the church, like we know, I was hoping we can get to a situation where we have a religious leader who would stand and say, you know what, enough is enough. This is now the time that you guys should sit down and find a way forward that works for everyone. To be the moral compass, number one. And then we'd also would like to see a situation where the church is not like burying its head under the sand and folding its hands. And why is this happening? We've already given the answer. They've already been bought and they're in the pocket. But if they would go back to their foundation and see, why does the church exist in the first place? Let them be our moral compass. Let them be the voice of reason to stand and tell politicians, now it is time to stop. It is time to stop politicking and do the things that you said you would do. That's one thing that I'd really love to see the church do. The second thing, yes, things are happening. It's a whole maandamano, first of all, let's start by acknowledging some of the things that we saw. I was very glad to see that doctors was first of all being hosted at Cardinal Otunga. Mamlaka Chapel also opened its gates for people who couldn't get home. That was very nice because the church also stays there to serve the community. So we do not want the church to be silent in times like this. We want them to be the voice of reason, to be the ones to stand and tell the politicians, it is time to stop. It is no longer, it's not even time to dialogue. It's time for you guys to do what you said you would do. Period. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, Kimani.
I agree. The church should really get out of bed with these political figures. And as she has rightfully stated, remember why it is the church. Remember why you're a religious organization. Because when you focus on profit, when you focus on other things that were not meant for the church to be, then you lose your entire moral authority to even comment on certain issues. Because how therefore will you call out sin or the other things in very absolute terms? But then when it comes to questions of political and misuse of power, for example, you almost seem to not have any comment. We have seen time and time again the religious leaders, including the Muslim leaders, the Christian leaders, and the leaders of the Hindu, I believe, when it is the question of lesbian, gay, bisexual, LGBTQ, they're usually very, very quick to go to the streets. They are very quick to rally because they believe we can call this out in absolute terms as evil, right? But then, because they are being built by money from corruption, they are being financed by money from corruption, their entire foundation is almost now dependent on money that is proceeds of crime, really. They are unable to speak because how then can you bite the hand that feeds you or spit on the face of the person that feeds you? It becomes very difficult. So once they go back to the foundational systems, they can be able to call out wrong as wrong and right as right. And as you rightfully stated, the church has a role to play with, that is a practical role. If the mosque was opening its doors to doctors, to people to donate blood and all this, why are these very magnanimous churches that are being built around unable to do that? If they are collecting offering of millions of money, why are they unable to provide practical solutions to the community that they are in? Yeah. So is it a question of just personal enrichment and saying that the house of the Lord is beautiful, while the people that contribute, or the people that actually laid the foundation and brick of that church, are unable even to feed their families? It is disheartening. It does not follow the example of the founders of these so-called religions. It is just deviated from the mark because of now a focus on this personal gain and personal enrichment, and the church is really able to offer these solutions. We cannot say that, oh, the church is supposed to be a religious... No. You cannot preach to an individual that is hungry.
Yes.
The scripture themselves give him something so that you can tell him now, you can go on your way, or you can, But, and the churches also have big platforms where we cannot reach as individuals that are maybe the lawyers or the activists and all that. The church has a reach to these communities. If we said that the entire foundation of this governance is because the people that are religious rallied to elect this man, and we have seen that this man duped us, this man is unable to deliver on his mandate, it is the responsibility of these people to convey the message of the revolution to the people, break it down in a manner that they understand, and say, this is what we expected, this is not what we have, and this should be the way forward. Those platforms are actually more powerful than anything else. They are more and they can put into motion change that we have never seen before in this nation, because people religiously go to churches every Sunday or every Saturday or to mosque every Friday, and it is these platforms that need to be platforms of change, because let us not focus on the heavenly reward that we forget that we are here.
Yes.
We are here. We need practical solutions for people that are alive. So why should you focus on going to heaven or going to wherever you want to go in future while your life is miserable here? Offer people solutions that are here. And those solutions are only offered when governance structures and systems are actually functional.
What role do we have to play as congregants? What role do we have to play as people who go to church? Because it is not these leaders that elect these people or follow them. It is us who are sitting in that audience who are the ones who will, number one, go and elect these leaders. Number two, who will be cheering them on as they're on the pulpit. And number three, who will be excited when they give us money to build our churches. Because if you have contributed to church building, you know how expensive it is of a venture. You know how expensive it is, especially the kind of luxurious churches we want to be constructed nowadays. How then do the practical solution from us and for us as the young people, as citizens, as congregants of these churches? I'll start with you, Kimani.
If your pocket is hurting and you are alive to the fact that it is hurting, and you are suffering the pinch of impunity, it will be very difficult for you to now start pretending that you do not care for it. When people say that, I'm not interested in politics, I'm tempted to speak harsh words to them. But I believe it's a question of also either they are beneficiaries of these systems, they are in high horses of privilege that they do not suffer or they do not resonate with the struggle of the common man, or they are just ignorant. And ignorance is actually something that is curable because we can always inform you, and if you resist, we resist also with the information. And you have to be informed. You have to know what is going on around you. And when the effects of impunity reach your door, you will have no option but to resist. When they say that when they came for the socialists, I was silent because I was not a socialist. They came for the communists. I said, I'm
not
good.
one
I'm
either.
not a communist. But when they came for me, there was no one else now to speak for me. Yeah. So we do not want it to get to the point where they're coming for you. But you have to be at a point where you say, despite the fact that I might be having my middle income job and I'm getting my few thousands here, and maybe I might not predominantly suffer the consequences of bad governance, but I resonate with the struggle of the common man.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
this is a government that does not care whether you have a paycheck and you're living in a suburb or whatever. They will just tear gas you in your house. You know, you do not need to be in the streets protesting. There are people in Madare that were just closing up their businesses and they were shot dead. Yeah. So when you want to pretend that this is a problem of the people that are idle, the people that have been funded, for example, to go to the streets, it's a very ignorant statement to make, because these consequences will just come to each and every one of us, regardless of whatever sorts of privilege that we have. And we have to ensure that our leadership and the people that we elect, you know, we cannot afford to now just turn a blind eye and say the systems are bad, they will obviously rig the election, and then we have no power.
So why should we vote even?
Exactly, because these systems are there in place for a purpose. And whatever we have been able to accomplish, even though many might say maybe it's not much, is proof enough that when we come together, we are able to effect change to some certain point in time, to a certain extent. And so therefore, we have a responsibility, it's a responsibility, moral or whatever, to use the small platforms that we have. You know, there are people, I'm very passionate about the conflict in Palestine, for example. And for a long time, I was talking about the situation, and a lot of people were saying it is a useless thing that you're doing. But it's the same people that are now saying, you see the power of social media. We came to the streets because of social media. We came to the streets because of this information that we got. But when I was trying to use the same whatever, you thought that it was an exercise in futility. It is really not. We are able to use our voices. We are able to use the platforms that we have, no matter how small they are, even this platform, to try and speak to the heart and pockets and minds of our people, to ensure that let us not shelve our logic just because we are people of the cloth. Let us not shelve our logic just because we are focused on going to heaven. Yeah, it is in fact the study of various religious contexts or religious texts rather, is proof enough of a people resisting impunity.
But,
it is actually one of the most empowering things that you can gain from, because if you are saying wrong is wrong, murder is murder, then that is also in the religious text, and we can insist that a murderer shall not be a president. An individual accused of crimes against humanity shall not be president, regardless of whether those crimes are proven or not. Have you ever been accused of such crimes? So why should we not elect you? Yeah? Why does it seem like we have no options?
You see, this, when you look at the kind of mandamano we had, this was a bit different. If you compare it to the mandamanos we had in September, it was, you know, people who we identified as, you know, poor from low-income places coming to the streets. But this time, we saw middle class.
they say these were protests. Those ones were
Mandamano. So these are protests. So like, when we were occupying, we saw middle class people coming to the street. Why? Because now they started to see, hey, this is how this finance bill is going to affect me. But did we have to get there? That's the question I've been asking myself. Did we have to get there? We could have stopped this in 2022 when we were electing. But that time we buried our heads under the sun. So this is what I think. We don't have to get to the place where things are really, really bad. This is my observation that I've made, like, generally in this country. When something does not directly affect you, it's none of your business. If you have water if I have water in my house, I can afford my tokens, I can afford transport to go to work, I have a car, I can just complain about the bad roads. It's none of my business. And I think that is what we should stop as a country. We should all rise up and demand for accountability and transparency. It is I want to believe it's our God-given duty to hold our leaders accountable. And that's the first thing. The second thing, I also think our people suffer from a lot of ignorance. And someone said, I saw a TikTok or a meme the other day, that I cannot believe the president removed me from my baby girl era of being mysterious. Yes, I love that. I'd want us to come out of our ignorance phase, go and read. Let's find out, what does it mean to have this person in power? How is this one going, not only to affect me, but as a people, let's stamp out this ignorance that we have as a people, most importantly as Christians, because we are very good at that, just like bury our heads under the sand and not want to be involved.
This world is not our home.
Yeah, we are marching to Zion. Please, before we go to Zion, we are here on earth, to do our God-given duty, to keep our leaders accountable. And lastly, on that point, is it Mahatma Gandhi who was saying that if all Christians were like Christ, this world would be a better place? Yeah, and if all Christians were like Christ, the things that are happening right now should not be happening. Like, someone would stand there and be the voice of reason. So yeah, let's stamp out ignorance. Let's be, I believe if Christ was today here in Kenya, he would not bury his head under the sand.
He would call out.
Yes.
Yeah, he would. And as you're speaking, I was seeing your Instagram posts all the time about Palestine. And I was just remembering that quote, I think, Betrayal in the City, for those who did that set book. When the madness of an entire nation disturbs a solitary mind, it is not enough to say that the man is mad. And they were speaking to Mulili and how he was in his state of mind. Because now we've gotten to a point in the country where a lot of young people, everyone has taken it as a personal responsibility. We look like madmen out here. Like, if you look at my Twitter feed, I even stopped posting things that make me happy. Instagram feeds of young people look like Mau Mau warriors reincarnated. All of us have been turned to freedom fighters, and we do not want, it's unfair to go back to a nation where we act like freedom fighters, yet we have freedom. But it's basically on paper, the same way having no state religion is basically on paper, but in practice, it's not actually there. And my problem is with, as Erica, you were talking, I'm just remembering, my problem is with the members of the church. Let's even leave the leadership of the church aside, but the membership of the church, because when we look at how we are in church, we still have the tribal mindset of mtu wetu, even within the churches. So we can be out here talking and telling the young people, no, we need to get rid of this mtu wetu mindset. We need to get rid of, he's president appointed by God and all that. Because then we are also making ourselves, we are trying to sanitize ourselves, yet we are the same people in church. So it's more of a moral issue. But then you remember in law school, when you say something like morality, you'll be told, whose morality? Everyone's right and wrong is very different. But now, even as we're trying to conclude, and I'll give us a few minutes to just say something to everyone who's watching, and you can just give them, not necessarily like a parting shot, but if you are asked as a young person, what are your expectations, particularly when it comes to how the church should conduct itself in times like this, how the church should conduct itself when it comes to social issues, and not just coming out. And we've seen men of the cloth, by all of them holding a discussion and saying homosexuality, nini. How then do we want them to come out strongly? And what is your view as a young person, both of you being of the Christian faith, when you go to church, what do you expect of the church? What do you expect of the president as number one, the president, but also as a Christian? Because now he's giving himself more responsibility. We hold him in higher regard than we would for any other president, because he's professed openly that he's a Christian. And also being the president, the expectations are a little bit high. And I think maybe that's why people are disappointed in him. Our expectations were raised, like he raised the bar a little too high. So what would be your expectation of the president, of the church as a young person? And basically even the members of the church. The church here, you'll speak to the leadership and the congregation at church. I'll start with you, Erica, and then Kimani can close for us.
This is what I'd tell the church. Let's not be ignorant. Ignorance is bliss. Let's find out. Let's get to understand how these things affect us. Number one. The second thing, let us also be accountable and keep our duty bearers accountable. It is our God-given responsibility.
So our forefathers did not need language, did not need an understanding of structures of governance, democracy, or whatever in order to call out impunity. They saw impunity and they called it out as impunity. They saw slavery, they saw colonization, and they called it out as colonization. So we do not need colorful language to call out impunity. If it's corruption, it is corruption. And at any moment in time that we become passive in times of impunity, we become participants in furthering the said impunity. So we cannot afford to stay silent. We cannot afford to stay passive in times of impunity, because it is then that we are most needed, either as the members of the church or as the leaders of the church. The members themselves have taken it up upon themselves to ensure that they call out this impunity. Let us not be the stumbling block as the leaders of this church to try and make them passive, to try and make them more agreeable because their revolutionary spirits are not maybe in line with what is the requirements of the Holy Spirit. Let us ensure that even as a people, we continually and deliberately seek accurate information that is verifiable in order to use that as a weapon for the fighters against impunity. It becomes extremely difficult when you are advancing a certain agenda and you are uninformed in the said agenda. It becomes extremely difficult for you to communicate ideas effectively when you are uninformed. And in one way, the system in itself has been designed in such a manner that it ensures we do not gain this knowledge. But we have also had ingenious ways that have been developed to ensure that we seek this knowledge. So we have to be deliberate. We have to be deliberate, be it the reading of texts that are emanating from governance or the religious texts in themselves, because it is when we do not have a good grasp of the religious text that they are manipulated to make us more passive. So we cannot allow even our religious leaders themselves, because if it is calling for accountability, we have to start with them, because it is them that are using this text to make us passive or to tell us, let us calm down, when we are not needed to calm down. So we have a due diligence obligation to not only seek our maker in a manner that is informed, but also call for accountability in a manner that is authoritative and informed. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just to add something.
Yes,
you know, for a Christian who's wondering, like, why are you telling us to be transparent and accountable? And you want a biblical example? Look at Joseph. You know, when he was being pursued by Potiphar's wife, he said, how can I do this thing against my God? You know, he was a religious person, you see. And later on, we see this guy ascending to the points of power, of being a whole governor. Would he have ascended to the point of being a governor if he had slept with Potiphar's wife?
No.
And I agree, because we cannot call out impunity when we ourselves are active participants in the said impunity. And actually, I think that is also one of the stumbling blocks, because you are resistant in calling out certain forms of evil, because you yourself, you know, you are incompetent in your job, you are incompetent in any responsibility that you are given. So how can you call out an incompetent president when the personal standard that you have for yourself is a standard of incompetence? You are a wife, a beater, you are a drunkard, you are a total mess. You are unable to manage your own life. So how exactly will you call out an individual that is tasked with managing a nation? Obviously, you can make the argument that he has a higher responsibility and all that, but if you have a following of a religion, then you have a personal responsibility not only to yourself, but also to your maker, to ensure that your life is somewhat in order, that what you have been given, ile umepewa, umeperform. Sasa huyu mwingine utasema aje huyu hajaperform na wewe ukipewa perform.
Yes.
So that
guys, they were on fire. And as much as I would love to continue this conversation, maybe we should have them here for part 2 of a whole different conversation, because this has been quite intense, amazing, and a lot of truth bombs have been dropped. But here would be my final take or my parting shot. Number 1, to our church leaders and those men of the cloth, please get out of bed with the state. Your role is clearly defined in the Bible, in the Quran, and in whatever material you use as a guide for your religion. Number 2, for the congregation, that is me and you and all of us who are here, be vigilant, be a diligent citizen, because in as much as they say leadership or good leaders come from God, it is then our mandate to elect those good leaders. And the Bible doesn't just say leaders, it's good leaders. So it is our role and it is up to us to wake up in 2027 and vote for these good leaders. Now then you'll ask yourself, what is the measure of a good leader? I think the Bible is quite clear. Any leader that supports impunity, any leader that is corrupt, that is not a good leader, and that is not a person to put in authority. As our guests have rightly put it, those who've been even accused should not be anywhere close to the seats of leadership, particularly the highest seat of the land. And now, to our political leaders, our political class, all I have to say to you is, get out of the pulpit. That is not your place. And to the president, right now we do not need the Christian, you do not need a prayer warrior. You can do that in your own home. Fine, we do not stop you from praying, you can go to church. But remember, Kenyans did not elect you to be their religious leader. We elected you as our president. Be the president. Do what you're supposed to do. Get a hang of, number 1, your cabinet and everyone who's working under you, and get a hand on the country. That is all from us here. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you in the next episode. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Shared Moments with Justus.